A murder from 18 years ago, to which he only just officially confessed, is what put Joran van der Sloot's name in the headlines. But he's done far more than that over the course of his life. In 2005, headlines across the US were reporting on minute-by-minute developments in the investigation into the disappearance of an Alabama high school student, Natalee Holloway. Exactly what happened to Holloway remained a mystery, but she was officially declared dead in 2012. Her mother never stopped trying to learn her fate and put the person responsible for her disappearance behind bars.
This is where Natalee's life ended, but this was not her life.
Years passed, and it seemed like justice was just never going to come. But in June 2023, one of the main suspects from the initial investigation was in headlines again. Joran van der Sloot was being extradited from a Peruvian jail and sent to the US on fraud and extortion charges. In October, he pleaded guilty to those charges in a plea bargain that included the startling confession that he killed Holloway with a cinder block.
I take this and I smash her head in with it completely.
Van der Sloot's story of what happened that night has changed repeatedly, but a lack of evidence has meant that official charges haven't stuck until now. Van der Sloot has been connected with a whole slew of other crimes, including sex trafficking, drug rings, and even another murder. Natalee Holloway went missing on a trip to Aruba, and almost immediately, Joran van der Sloot became a person of interest. According to what his mother revealed in a Dutch interview, she always knew that there was a dark side to her son. The van der Sloot family are Dutch nationals. Anita van der Sloot said that although she initially denied her son had anything to do with Holloway's disappearance, his story changed constantly. He eventually said that while he had seen her that night, he wasn't responsible for her death. His revisions to the story made Anita uncertain. She said, "Maybe he missed his chance to become an actor. Maybe that should have been a role in his life. I really don't know. I can hardly believe that he can fake this." Anita also claimed that her son had mental health issues and added that even when he was young, they had problems with him sneaking out of the house at night. She said he was spending his nights gambling at area casinos, and ultimately, gambling became a persistent theme for him. Joran van der Sloot was initially arrested in connection with the Holloway case in 2005, along with Deepak and Satish Kalpo. All were released due to a lack of evidence. They were arrested again in 2007, but a week later, the Kalpo brothers were released once again. Van der Sloot was released as well, along with a statement saying that there was no evidence the three men were guilty of murder, or that Holloway had even been killed. That same year, Van der Sloot, with the help of a Dutch journalist, published a book called The Case of Natalee Holloway, My Own Story About Her Disappearance on Aruba. The book claimed that Van der Sloot had met Holloway at the Carlos and Charlie's nightclub. They left together, headed to the beach, and the last time he saw her was when he left her there. He wrote, "I'm no angel, but I did nothing illegal, and I'm certainly not a murderer." Van der Sloot told a different story in 2016, though, when a videotape of him apparently confessing to the murder surfaced. It was still no smoking gun, though. Holloway's father told the Huffington Post that a confession is only admissible if it's signed, according to Aruban law. Verbal confessions don't count, and he explained the motive. Tabloids will pay for his story because it sells magazines. Joran van der Sloot was secretly filmed in 2008, saying that he was present for Holloway's death and disposed of her body. The video was obtained by a friend of his and originally aired on Dutch television. In it, he claimed that Holloway had an apparent seizure and died on the beach. He said, "Suddenly she started shaking, and then she didn't say anything. I would never murder a girl." He went on to admit that he hadn't been completely sure she was dead, but that he had enlisted the help of a friend to carry her body onto a boat and dispose of her in the ocean. Van der Sloot later said that he was lying, and backing that up is the fact that there were no records of the payphone being used at the time the call to his friend was supposedly made.
I've already told a lot of different stories. I'll do it again.
The mysterious friend in question actually came forward when he found himself suddenly tied to one of the biggest missing persons cases in recent history. Dory Rodriguez was contacted by a biographer writing Van der Sloot's story and immediately reached out to law enforcement. At the time of Holloway's disappearance, he was living in Holland, and he had documents to prove it. Their only connection was that they had been teenage acquaintances and played sports together, and he made it clear that he had nothing to do with the case. In 2008, Dutch crime reporter Peter R. de Vries obtained a video of Van der Sloot in a hotel in Thailand, where he was meeting with several young women. DeVries explained to Good Morning America, "There is no doubt at all that he was trying to sell young Thai girls to sex clubs. The point is, he is of a criminal mindset, in my opinion." Investigations into the claims led to some seriously dark allegations. In 2007, Vandersloot headed to Thailand on a student visa. While he was attending Rangsit University, he allegedly spent nights posing as a talent scout for a modeling agency, luring women with promises of a life as a dancer in a high-end Dutch nightclub. He then reportedly sold them into a sex trafficking ring instead, earning $13,000 per person. DeVries' allegations led authorities in both the Netherlands and Thailand to investigate Vandersloot for his alleged role in sex trafficking. In the meantime, Vandersloot continued to travel, and more complaints were filed against him, including one woman who claimed he had assaulted her in Macau after meeting her in a casino. Even with the investigations, Vandersloot was never charged in relation to the trafficking allegations. Joran Vandersloot was back in the headlines in 2023 for his extradition back to the US on charges of extortion, and it turns out that it was a long process. At the time the announcement was made, there was no clear timeline as to when he was going to be moved from the Peruvian jail he was currently being held in to face charges in the States. And here's what happened. In 2010, Vandersloot had allegedly approached Natalee Holloway's mother, Beth, and offered to tell her where her daughter was buried for $250,000. Law enforcement got involved, and Vandersloot was recorded accepting an initial partial payment. Although that might have been enough to get him arrested, law enforcement held off. Reports suggest that officials wanted to get evidence to press charges in Holloway's death, so they didn't immediately arrest him. Just a few days after getting his payment, Vandersloot headed to Peru on a trip that would have deadly consequences. There's a small footnote here too. According to what law enforcement told CNN, the person who made the handoff was an undercover FBI agent. The money, however, was reportedly privately raised, and that's important. At the time, it was unclear whether or not that money had been used to fund a trip that would leave a 21-year-old girl dead. The date of May 30th, 2010 is significant for two reasons. Not only does it mark precisely 5 years since the disappearance of Natalee Holloway, but it's also the day that Stephany Flores was murdered. Her body was discovered a few days later in a hotel room rented by Joran Vandersloot. And that, along with the fact that Vandersloot was seen on the video surveillance footage with Flores before her death, was enough to point to him as the prime suspect. After returning to his room on May 30th, he's seen leaving, alone, a little over 3 hours later. Her father, Enrique Flores, told CNN that once he was identified, they were told his name. As he recounted, "We came back home and searched his name on the internet. I cannot tell you the shock we felt. My wife typed Joran Vandersloot into Google and started screaming for me to see. I couldn't believe it. How could it be that guy?"
The pain that we're feeling will never go away.
The Flores family appealed for justice, and in 2012, Vandersloot entered a guilty plea at his trial, saying, "I wanted from the very first moment to give a sincere confession. I feel very bad." The prosecution recommended a 30-year jail sentence for Vandersloot, and he was ultimately sentenced to 28 years behind bars. After his conviction for the murder of Stephany Flores, Joran Vandersloot was initially sent to Peru's Piedras Gordas prison. In 2014, the Associated Press reported that just about a month after he married his pregnant girlfriend, he was transferred out of the prison. Why? He had recorded himself making death threats to the prison's warden after he had his cell phone confiscated.
Vandersloot threatened to kill the warden of the prison where he had been serving a 28-year term for the 2010 murder of a 21-year-old Peruvian woman.
Vandersloot was relocated to Chayapalca prison, and it's worth noting just what kind of place this is. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights issued a call for the prison to be shut down, citing inhumane conditions. According to reports, there's no reliable water, cells have no electricity, communications are sketchy at best, and the temperature fluctuates between 46 and -4 degrees Fahrenheit. In 2014, Joran Vandersloot's wife, Lady Figueroa, went to the Daily Mail with photos that she claimed were proof that Vandersloot had been repeatedly stabbed while he was in Chayapalca prison. She told the outlet, "Joran was stabbed many times in the stomach by other inmates. He was almost killed. I'm scared for his life. He's losing a lot of blood but isn't receiving any medical attention. He's been very poorly. I've been trying to get the guards to take him to the hospital." She went on to claim that he had been subjected to racist slurs from other inmates, that he had been attacked other times, and that the guards had tried to stop her from leaving with his bloodied clothes. Sloot had also written a letter with his claims, saying that he had been told the guards, quote, had been given the green light to break all his bones. Also thrown into the mix were claims that his death was being seen as a celebrity-level sacrifice that would help push for the closing of the prison. Reuters reported that according to prison officials, none of it was true, that there had been no attack. They quoted a statement from Peruvian penitentiary head Jose Luis Perez. "Absolutely nothing has happened to him. That woman is lying." Details are scarce, but what has been reported about Joran van der Sloot's time in jail suggests that he's been involved in several drug-related incidents. In one, he was allegedly filmed trying to buy marijuana from another inmate, which his attorney denied. Peruvian media outlets later reported that he had been connected to a drug trafficking ring, citing an incident in which a visitor allegedly brought him 19 beets that were found to contain cocaine and marijuana. Van der Sloot was then accused of selling the drugs to other inmates. He was put on trial and had another 18 years and 4 months added onto his sentence.